Sharon, you've been, the past few weeks, the songs have been particularly good. Thank you for everything you do with it, but you picked out some really good ones. I've been really enjoying it. And that's something else, too. Thank you today for adding in the third verse of some of those things. Man, if we keep singing all of the verses in the hymn, we're going to have to put Pentecost on the sign.
Yeah.
They won't even know we're Baptist anymore if we start
We're
singing that third
Baptist.
verse.
They call us Baptist.
All right. Real quickly ahead of our business meeting, of course, we're not going to meet and not look at the Word some, so we'll do something. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4. And we're just going to briefly look at some thoughts in here. This is a fairly easy passage to understand. It's a very simple exhortation. There are no slides. I didn't bother with any of think of this more of a devotional type thing. This is a simple exhortation to church unity. And I didn't choose this passage because we're about to have a business meeting. I don't really anticipate any problems. And I didn't choose it because we don't have any, we have certain issues. We don't have anything like that going on. I don't foresee anything anytime soon that's going to really cause problems. But you never know. We have to always be diligent, okay? I chose it because it's a beautiful passage of Scripture. And one day I want to go through it thoroughly. I've always wanted to go through Ephesians 4, especially these first few verses, very thoroughly because they're so good. But we're going to cover them today very quickly. Just get the gist of what Paul is telling us to do there. And what you'll see in a moment, we're going to start in the middle and work our way outwards. And you'll see why I do that in just a moment. But in Ephesians chapter 4, beginning in verse 1, we have this exhortation to church unity here, okay? And Paul says it this way: I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called, with all lowliness and gentleness, long-suffering, bearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body, one Spirit, just as you were called, one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. And that's it, okay? That's it. There are two instructions here. Very quickly, the first one's found in verse 1, walk worthy of your calling. That's the first one. And then in verse 3 is the one we're going to focus on. Endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Okay? There are obviously three very important words in that verse: endeavor, keep, unity. And that tells us all we need to know about what Paul is instructing us to do. He is telling us that we are to work to keep the unity, the oneness that the Spirit has already created, and I'm going to touch on that in a second, which is what brings peace to a church. A church that is experiencing peace is just naturally experiencing what they ought to. And that is not, peace isn't achieved in the church by us. It's created in the church by the Spirit. But it doesn't mean we have no part in it, and this is what Paul is telling us to do. So let's look real quickly. First of all, I want to point out, we're not told here to create anything. We're not told to create oneness in the church. By the way, we can't do that. It's not possible for a bunch of sinful, even redeemed human beings to do that with one another. Okay? We're not told to create oneness. It already exists. It was already created for us. Paul says, by the Holy Spirit in verse 3. He's the one that creates unity. And let me show you what I mean in verse 4. Paul creates this list of all the things that we have to be unified by and unified about. He lists the oneness we have in verse 4. Look what he says. There's one body. By that he means church. Okay? There's one Spirit. You were called with one hope. There's only one Lord. There's one faith. There's one baptism. There's one God. On and on. He goes. And his point there is that we're united already. In many, many ways, we already have unity. And we'll continue to have it as long as we make sure those things are the main things. All right? That's the work we're called to do. And this is what we're going to look at in just a second in verse 3. It's what happens is when we start making other things the main things, that's when the fight gets started. And that's when peace gets destroyed. All right? And so what Paul is telling us here is this, that there will always be peace in a church who endeavor to keep the main things the main things. We already have unity. We don't need to look for things to be unified around. We have one. His name is Jesus. And because of him, we are everything we are. And so when you look at things, and we're very fortunate. I know some of you have had tough experiences in churches. We have too, by the way. Okay, and some of you are, have that unfortunately in your walk, in your background, and you know how fortunate we are here right now to not even concern ourselves with that sort of stuff, right? And what happens is when you take the things that have unified us, according to verse 4, and you set them aside to put something else in the middle, that is when the peace goes away. And this is why we are commanded to do what we're commanded to do in verse 3. When we take the church and we set it aside for the way we decide to worship, when we take the Lord and we set him aside for the guy we decide to hire as pastor, right? Or when we take the hope of our calling and we set it aside for what kind of building we may want to build over here. We take what unifies us and we take it and we move it from the middle and we put something else in its place, and then peace disappears. And that's how it happens. That's why Paul tells us we don't have to create unity. We don't need to look for ways to all get along, right? Or we don't need to figure out something to rally around. We have something. His name is Jesus. We already have the only thing that can truly unite sinful people. And and I'll point this out too real quick, even in the worst churches that are the most divided and have the most problems with each other, most conflict, they still have unity. They've just chosen to abandon it in favor of something else. Okay? And so that brings us to verse 3, and this is what I want to point out. Paul tells us then our instruction is this: endeavor to keep that unity. See, we already have unity. We have to endeavor to keep it. That's what we're commanded. That's what we're instructed to do. All right? That word keep means to guard, to watch over. We can't create unity, but we have unity already. Our job is to do what with it? To protect it. We have to do whatever it takes to protect the unity that the Spirit has already created in this church. We have to protect that. And I'll show you from what in just a moment. He says that we are to endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit. Now, I'll just simplify this real easily. What that means in Greek is to be quick about it, to make every effort. What he's saying is this: be quick about making every effort as often as you can to protect the unity that the Spirit has already created. That's what he's saying in the original language. Be quick to make every effort, every chance you get, to protect the unity God has created in the Spirit. That's the do here, right? God's telling us to do something. That's our part. We have to work to protect the unity he has created. To endeavor means to work at something, doesn't it? And that's what we're being instructed to do. Work at protecting unity. Work at it. And you may be asking yourself, well, why is it such work? I mean, why would Paul say it's something we have to work at? Well, you ought to already know, because unity is not natural to us. Division is. Right? In and of ourselves, division is what's natural to us. Human beings always do the same thing. What? They break themselves up, right? The little groups. These are the cowboys. These are the motorcycle riders. These are this. These are that. And these are this. And these are. And then you get in these little groups. Then the people in that group start distinguishing themselves within the little group. That's all we know how to do. This is what happened in the church in Corinth when Paul says, I can't believe there's so much division among you guys. One of you said, well, I'm Paul's disciple. I'm Apollos' disciple. I'm this. I'm that. Division is what's natural to us. The unity that we have is a gift that God has created and given us. And here's what that means. Unity is a spiritual work, not a fleshly work. You can't achieve unity in the flesh. We'll always find a reason to divide. And so what we have here is the work, and here's sort of I'm going to draw the net right now. The work of keeping the unity which the Spirit has created in us is the work of doing what? controlling ourselves. Look at what he says in verses 1 and 2. This is very important, verses 1 and 2. I urge you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called. How? Lowliness, gentleness, long-suffering, bearing with one another in love. You know what the biggest threat to our church unity is? It's you. It's me. I'm the biggest threat to this church. Not the devil. Not some false prophet's going to walk in the door and all of a sudden we'll all become a cult. Right? Not even some terrorist is going to bust in and do harm. Those things are real and they're dangerous. But the biggest danger to this congregation is me. And it's you. That's what Paul says we have to protect it from. We have to protect this church from ourselves. Because our natural inclination is to mess up all the unity God's created. Because what we want fundamentally is to exalt ourselves in some way or the other. And that's why Paul tells us here in verses 1 and 2, I want you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called. And here's what that looks like. You have to be humble. You have to be gentle. You have to prefer one another. You have to love one another. You have to serve one another, because the biggest threat to the church is you and me. It's not something from the outside. God can protect us from all of that. We aren't charged with protecting the church from any outside threat. We're instructed to protect it from its greatest threat, and that's us. And that's what Paul means when he says you have to work to keep the unity of the Spirit. The work you have to do is on yourself, is on myself. Okay, I have to work to be, verse 2, lowly, gentle, long-suffering, bearing one another. And if I will do the work to make sure I'm that kind of Christian, I will be doing my part to protect what God's done here. And that's the instruction. How do we do that? Very simply. Each of us has to always do, every chance we get, each of us has to make sure that the main things, verse 4, stay the only thing. Okay? Now, I understand there are legitimate things the church must do, right? We have to have lights, we have to have water, we have to make certain decisions about, all sorts of things, and right? And then we have additional things we might want to do, right? And those are cool. That's not what's in view here, all right? But those are where things can become very, very dangerous. Because what we can't do is we can't let something that doesn't matter take the place of the only things that do matter. Because that's when the fight starts. Okay? And here's the truth. I mean, I don't care if we read our songs out of books or off of screens. I don't care if we read them at all. I preached in Mexico for years. We never had a book at all. We still sang songs. Isn't that amazing? You can do it. Right? And I don't care if the walls are white or if they're tan. I don't care if the roof is shingles or if it's metal. Here's the thing is my only concern is that we remain a group of people who love each other more than we love ourselves. That's it. That is it. Beyond that, nothing else matters. Not that the stuff isn't important. It's not that nothing else needs to be done. It doesn't matter. That's Paul's point. God has already, the peace that we enjoy, and we do genuinely enjoy peace in this congregation. And the peace that we enjoy, that bond of peace, he says in verse 3, was created by the Spirit of God as he's unified us around all the things in verse 4. And all we have to do, so simple to keep what we've got, right? All we have to do is make sure verse 4 stays in the center, and individually we do everything necessary to make sure we don't mess it up. That's it. It's not hard. If it is hard at all, the hard part is controlling ourselves. It's not difficult to understand. It's not even really difficult to do. It's just a matter of choosing to do it, right? And we can do that if we can live every day with a practical sort of lowliness, gentleness, long-suffering toward one another, bearing one another, loving one another, and denying the real threat to our church, which is us. We're never going to have a problem in this church. Never going to have a problem in this church, right? And that is the call to church unity. Let's have a word of prayer. We will jump into our business.